Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar on RUFing It Out with your customer feedback and knowing the whys as to why you want to do that. My name is Jeremy McGrath and I'm the Customer Success Consultant at Categorize, and today we're actually joined by Sean Cramer of Atlassian, and he's going to be taking you through kind of roughing it out and what they came up with to actually help them with their internal feedback. Before I go ahead and switch over to Sean, I'm just going to tell you a brief little bit about Categorize. So Categorize is a customer service software, and the idea of Categorize is we're trying to help you and your customers kind of get better at customer service. We're used by about 35,000 organizations around the world to help them in their day-to-day use and kind of improve their customer service. Today for the webinar, if you want to get us on Twitter to ask your questions, use the hashtag roughing it out. You can also get us on email by emailing help@kaggle.com, and we'll pick those up as well. And you also have the questions box in your GoToWebinar software, so feel free to ask questions any way you want to. And obviously at the end of the presentation, we'll then answer those questions for you. So with that, I'm going to kind of introduce Sean here, and obviously he'll take you through roughing it out. Hi, Sean.
Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Cramer. I'm the head of the Voice of the Customer over at Atlassian. A little about myself. That is me, and that is my Twitter. You're welcome to follow it and absolutely follow you back. I'm very excited to be talking to many of you and hope that after this we can talk a little more about what we're doing here at Atlassian and maybe help you with some of the things that you're working on. So first off, does anybody know that date? I don't know that nobody will reply, but maybe some of you will think about it. Maybe some of you weren't even born yet. This is a specific date when it comes to feedback. And before I do this, the next thing I'm going to show you is a quick video. So turn up your speakers, listen in. I'm going to do my best to play it on off my computer, and hopefully this will work.
There's never been a better taste. There's been a better Coke. Introducing the greatest taste discovery in 100 years. Introducing the new taste of Coca-Cola. A taste that is Coke and everything a Coke means. A taste that's very familiar, yet totally new. A taste so good, so real, it couldn't be anything but a Coke. The great new taste of Coke. Watch for it, try it, and enjoy the best tasting Coke ever.
All right, so on April 14, 1985, something big happened to a growing industry. And now some of you remember, is the Coke Corporation decided that they would launch their new Coke, new flavor, new taste. It was the new Coke, a company that was struggling to gain market share. To Pepsi had really wanted to figure out how they could gain more customers and more revenue, so they decided to launch a new Coke with a new flavor. So knowing that date and knowing the launch, does anybody have any thoughts on what happened? Well, to explain it, people went crazy. Best said by one of the customers drinking Coke, which was, "Our children will never know refreshment. The new taste is gone." And in most cases, the Times said it was a disaster. Probably some of you have tasted it, probably some of you have heard it, but it was a disaster. That week, over 450,000 calls were made to the Coca-Cola support area as well. The market share that they wanted to gain actually dropped roughly about 3%, and in total about $150 million was lost. An executive said to hear that someone tell that April 23rd, 1985 will live in the day that marketing infamy, spawning consumer against likes of no other business can have ever seen before. So one of the biggest things is that a company that was struggling to gain market share and revenue, trying to roll out a new product, had to go through figuring out what they wanted to do because they weren't going in the right direction. So hopefully some of you know what happened. If you don't, they went back. And to this day, you will always see the Coca-Cola Classic. So the idea that I wanted to talk to you about is not the case that some of you might drink Coke and the mess up that Coca-Cola did, but more importantly, that feedback is absolutely important. Now, Coca-Cola did do some market testing, but as you saw from the example and have heard about it, they didn't do a lot, and it hurt them. They are continuing to grow, but one of the things that I want you guys to think about is what would happen if your company that you're working for or managing had lost $150 million. Do you feel like you could survive? I know with us or other companies that I work for, probably not. So the thing is it's extremely important. Now, at Atlassian, our focus is understanding that feedback and to figure out how we as a team can unleash the potential of other companies through collaboration. You can see some of the companies that use Atlassian, as well as some of the people that we help on bringing together their teams. Now, particularly, I want to talk about today some of the values that we have, and one particular value that is important to us as the Voice of the Customer team is right here. Now, as you've seen it, or if you haven't heard it, we have some really unique values. Play as a team, open company, no bullshit, be the change you seek, don't, yes, that is fuck the customer, and build with heart and balance. So particularly, I want to talk to you today about the don't F the customer. Not the case that I like dropping the F word, but more importantly that it's extremely important for us as a company to understand that feedback and ensure that we don't do that to our customer. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about, and then I want to open it up to some of your questions and feedback, is a couple of areas that we particularly are working on, what we found out once we've made some changes, and things that we're doing, and some of the things that you can do to start roughing out your feedback. So first off, one of the things that we do here at Atlassian is we value the feedback, and we currently gauge feedback in roughly about 11 areas, and particularly one that matters most to us is NPS. Now, we gather that to all of our end users through a series of emails and in-app modals. And much like you see here, under NPS asks that important question is, would you recommend, which helps us understand that loyalty. But the thing that we noticed as we started capturing all this feedback is that we got roughly about 25,000 comments a week. So you imagine how many that would add up. Now you think about that in maybe the company that you work for and the amount that you have, but 25 is a lot, right? And we realized something as we were going through it. And it's best said by Charles Kettering, who is a inventor, and he said there's a difference between knowing and understanding. You can know a lot about something, but not really understand it. So oftentimes you've seen that maybe you get some of that feedback and you know it, but you really don't understand it. That was us, right? We were getting a lot of it, we just didn't understand it all. And it often felt like, right, with NPS, is that you were moving that 9,000-pound boulder, something that probably all of you have, and is extremely really hard to move. So as we started looking at all this feedback, we saw a couple of things. First off, we saw that not only through the feedback that we were collecting through NPS, but other areas that we currently have, was that customers were giving a lot of feedback. Now, as we started looking at that feedback, we said, well, how can we get this data out to our executives, to our board, to our employees, and more importantly, to our product managers or people that will impact change for our customers? The first thing that we saw as we started looking at this was themes, right? And we wanted to keep it simple. The first theme that we saw with all of our products was reliability. Now, when I talk about reliability, we saw a lot of feedback that pertained to a couple of things like performance, uptime, quality, security, right? I like the product, but it's a little slow. I can't use it because of the time that it takes to commit something, or I don't know if I can trust it. The next theme that we saw was functionality. Now, what I mean by functionality is things like our customers saying, it would be really nice to have because maybe one of your other products or competitors has it. It might be missing a feature, and I would really like that feature. Or if you add this, that might help me to convert some of our customers or more people in my company to use it. The third thing that we saw was usability. Now, when I talk about usability, I talk about the complexity of a product. Is it easy to use, or the discoverability of features? So one of the things that we saw, right, was that every single customer or every ounce of feedback that we got could ideally be grouped into 3 buckets: the reliability of a product or service, the usability of a product or service, or the functionality of the product or service. Now, we try to keep it as, we always say that keeping it simple. RUF allowed us to keep it simple, but yet provide deeper dives into it. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is how have we learned about RUF, and how could it apply to you? More importantly, how could it apply to some of our products? So one area that I want to talk about is Confluence. Now, I'm thinking probably many of you have used Confluence before or are using it now. Now, particularly as we started looking at RUF, we wanted to find a product that we could really share with the feedback on and get change throughout the quarter. So what we did was we took our 40,000 comments, because remember I was talking to you about the case of the 25,000 that we were getting a week. This was a 40,000 month period. And what did we do? We roughed it out, right? Now we did, and every webinar does have to have an automated GIF. We did apply a little magic to that. That's a great GIF. And we learned a couple of things, and I want to share some of this, right? And this pertains to not only one of the values of not having the customer, but the open company. Is we saw a couple of themes, right? We saw that 31% had to deal with reliability, 63% had to do with usability, and 6% had to deal with functionality. Now, how many of you are in a company where your executives or you or the people maybe you work with are always based on the decision of functionality? Customers want functionality. They want the best product, so we're going to continue to develop great things and great features. Now, one of the things that we saw here, right, was that over 6% of just that month, right, wanted features. The biggest areas that they were focusing on was the reliability and usability. So you're thinking, well, okay, what does that help us do? What does that help learn? So what we ended up doing was we kind of took a double click, right, for our second layer down, and we saw a couple of things, right? We saw that in particular that the performance was a large percentage. Bug features, which is areas that we wanted to focus on, broke into that 31%. Complexity, content navigation were what comprised of the usability, and the 6% of the overall functionality was in the improved editing, right? So a lot to do and a lot that we could focus on, right? And as companies are limited in their resources and the work that they do, we wanted to figure out what we could do to move a needle, and what was the biggest needle that we could move to have the biggest impact. So what we did is we focused on the performance section of RUF, and we said if we can improve the performance, we're confident that we will lower the satisfaction or lower the mentions of our customers that are talking about performance, and also improve NPS. So we went out and shared this with our product managers and got them into the discussions and reading the comments. And we said, what's the biggest metric that they use? And they use something called Apdex. I don't know if any of you have heard Apdex, but Apdex manages page loads. It helps understand how fast a page is going or how they can improve the load time of it. We said, guess what? Focus on that, and we promise you that as you focus on that, you're going to kind of see things. So what did we see? We saw that as the teams focused on specific areas for improvements, right? So it's kind of honing on to a section, much like Apdex, and improving the page load time. Is that the mentions of Confluence in performance went down, right? So from December 14th, and when we shared this to this is December 15th, and to kind of give you down even more triple clicking, is that I think we're now at about 2%, has improve the overall mention. Now, as a portion of that, right, and this is before we were at 20.3% people that were mentioning it. 12%, which was affecting the score of NPS, was detractors. After we've worked on those improvements, we've lowered not only the detractors, okay, we've lowered overall the mentions. So the idea here is not kind of, how can this help? How has this helped us? Is that it's given our product managers a sense of direction on understanding core areas for improvement. So one thing in particular that we saw, which was really cool from one of our developers, he says lots of the features are easy to use. The main reason why I was talking or giving you detractors was based on performance. Now, it's fast, and I'm seeing that you guys recently have upgraded it, and I would probably be more likely to recommend it. And as a effect of that, our NPS has improved, and we've seen less people talk about it. So that is RUF, and that is how RUF has helped us. And hopefully some of you guys are going, that's pretty cool stuff. Well, I think so too. So let me share with you just a couple of slides, and then I want to open this up to some questions and maybe even follow up on how we can help you after this webinar. So take-home service, screen capture all this. It's all yours to take and learn from. The first thing I want you to think about is finding, first off, in order to build a great service and to follow up on your feedback and make changes, is to find those sources. Understand where those sources are. Now, at Atlassian, I mentioned that we had between 11 to 12 sources. We still do. Figure out where they're coming from and who's measuring them, who's saying it and why they're saying it, and have the effect, right? The biggest thing that customers, and we'll talk about in a second, hate is not a follow-up. They hate it, right? How many times have you gone to a restaurant and wanted to talk to the waiter, but the waiter never came, right? You want that follow-up, and you want to share your opinion. Understand where those sources are so you can rough it out. Categorize that content, right? As you start getting that content, or you getting the feedback, RUF could help you, right? RUF could help clean up that that categorization of how you break down everything. I know it certainly helped us. The next thing is determine those red lines. Figure out the issues that you might face and figure out how you can improve them. Get commitment. Now, I've said this a million times, and I stand by it, is that insights, feedback, data that you have is absolutely useless if you don't have the commitment. If you don't have people that are committed to improving those changes and making things better, you're not going to change anything. If you need any help on how to do that or things that might help on telling that story, please let me know. Happy to help with that. Next is establish your baselines. You can't determine if things are improving if you don't know what those are. So make sure that as you are looking at RUF, where you're looking at all of your feedback, that you establish the baseline metrics. For us at Atlassian, we use 3 core metrics: the NPS, RUF, and then CSAT for some of our support areas. Create the system is the next one. Now, as you're looking at your feedback, you might have a couple of different themes, right? You might have a handful of different things that might need to be fixed. One of the things I often recommend is focus on the 3 to 5 opportunities, more towards the 3, right? As you go to talk to people that change the products, or maybe yourself, it's hard to have or juggle 10 balls, right? It's a lot easier to juggle 2 or 3 of them. As you find your insights, find the ones that are going to be the most impactful and share them. Next is monitor those impacts. Now, at Atlassian, we create monthly scorecards. The customer insight team creates those every single month and then shares those with our product managers and our executives to show those impacts on those baselines. If things are changing, we want to show them. If they're declining, we want to show them. And we want to show the why to it, right? And the next thing is communicate internal. Oftentimes, right, you think about it, is bad data, or data is often hard to share, right? Communicate the insights that you get internally, right? The biggest thing that you often want to do is make sure that as you share these with your internal customers, right, the employees of your company, that you communicate how the impact is affecting satisfaction, also how it's in fact impacting the business. And as things improve, you're sharing both the great news and some of, unfortunately, maybe even the bad news. Last but not least, I got 2 more slides and open up to the questions, is close the loop. I mentioned that earlier. Oftentimes I say, think backwards and then go forwards, right? The biggest thing that you absolutely want to do is you want to make sure that you follow up on your feedback. Now, for us at Atlassian and the amount of pieces of feedback we have, we can't have enough staff in-house or anywhere to close feedback on 20,000 customers and to contact them. So one of the things that we've done, and I'll share it, is that how can we close that feedback loop within 20 to 48 hours? And I'll share some of the things that happen with us, and hopefully that'll help you. But make sure, everybody, make sure that as you close that loop, that you close it within 20 to 48 hours. Give insights, not action. Now, as you're going through this data, share with your customers, the ones that might be frustrated or the ones that are happy with things that you're working on. Do you remember the previous slide? I talked about 3 to 5 of those initiatives or those insights. Don't ever be afraid to share those insights with customers. In the case of open company, no bullshit here at Atlassian, the same thing could apply to you guys and your companies. Customers will never be afraid or never be frustrated if you're sharing with them what you're working on. Make sure you don't commit time, right? Because that causes another problem. But if your team is focused on those areas of improvement, I promise you that customers are going to be happier when you tell them what you're actually working on. Last but not least is, as you have done those changes and as you've communicated those updates or even made those updates, make sure that you close that loop on letting customers know. At Atlassian, we do like a 2-phase closing the feedback loop process. The first is within the 20 to 48 hours of we heard you and here are the changes. And then after that, after we make those implementations or those insights are done and turned into action, we communicate that in a series of blogs or emails. So last but not least, before we open up the questions, I want to share something with you. So Chris Carter is one of our customer insight managers on the Voice of the Customer team. And previously in the last slide, I mentioned about the closing the loop. So this is something that we tested a couple of months ago and are working to actually automate all of this, is that we sent out the email after feedback, right? And we said, here's where we are. We genuinely care about you. I know you have the question of what are we doing to improve? Remember those insights? Those are the insights that we said, right? We're improving the speed of the product. We're making it easier. Remember that complexity, right? Making it easier to use. And we're building a mobile app for Jira. So 1 R, 2 U, 3 F, right? If you have any questions, here's our email address. We're happy to help you. I appreciate it. So how did this perform? So just on sending the email, right, not committing or not deploying anything, so we were working on it, we had a 60% open rate. So of the people that we sent it to, 60% of that percentage opened it. Now of that 60%, 75% of those people that did see it and did read it, we did see a improvement in their score the next time we asked them if they would recommend it. Now, I'm not saying, everybody, that just communicate and not do anything. What I'm saying is that customers do want the follow-up. Customers do want the commitment, and the customers do want to be aware that you're working on. Overall, I can tell you that RUF has absolutely helped us to be more organized in all of the feedback. Now, you may have 300 to 300,000 of comments. And certainly for us, RUF has helped us understand that what. NPS for us is the what metric. How do we get to that number? What is that score? But RUF has helped us understand the why and how we need to get things done. So hopefully everything that I've shared with you in this short time has helped you understand 2 things. 1, that customer feedback matters and that you should take it to seriousness. Well, there's 3 things. 2, that insights without actions is absolutely important. Okay. And 3, if you rough it out, it's clean, it's simple, and it helps give clarity to the areas that you need to focus on. With that being said, we as a team want to do our best to help you rough it out. we are doing our best to see what we can do to share with you our insights, our code, or whatever we can to help you guys rough it out. If it's particularly the categories that we're breaking down, the queries that we're building, whatever it is, our goal is to make sure that we can help you guys do the same thing. As mentioned, the hashtag rough it out is certainly the mentions, but if you want to be part of the discussion and you ideally would love to rough it out with your company, please join the Rough It Out on Twitter. Our team manages that, and we constantly, it's growing. We'd love to be part of your roughing it out in your company and to help grow the measurement. Thank you.
Hi, Sean. Great. Thanks very much for that. That was actually a really good webinar, really insightful. I like the way of kind of categorizing your feedback, because that's obviously a good way to apply meaning to it. We have got some questions. Before I go over and actually ask them, just want to remind everyone that if you do have a question, feel free to pop it into the GoToWebinar software in the questions box or the chat box, and we'll pick it up from there. You can also use the hashtag roughing it out, and we'll pick it up from there. And you can also email us at hello@cago.com, and we can pick it up from there as well. So with that said, let me go ahead, Sean, and ask you the first question that's come through. And one customer's basically said, is one area of rough more important than the other? So the example they've given here, they said if you're mapping out your feedback and it comes to a split of maybe 40 versus 20, where do you actually start on there? You know, what identifies which is more important? And I think this might have come from your webinar where you actually did your breakdown, and I think you actually had 31% versus 61 or 63%, and you actually targeted 31% underperformance. And so I guess some insights as to why you chose that is more important than the higher percentage.
So great question. So for us, one of the things that we looked at was what teams were currently in place and which one could we help improve the most. In addition to some of the feedback that we were seeing, and I didn't mention here, is a lot of the customer churn that we were having with some of our customers that were using our products was dealing with performance. So as we started factoring in the performance section, though it was smaller than the actual usability side, we saw that performance could help us quickly to make those changes. Now, I'm not saying that you know, improving page load times was something that was done overnight, but one of the things we saw that it was the overall theme of some of our other products. So we saw that as we could probably improve that area, we could show the biggest quick, impactful to the business and to the product. And okay, I think just to add to that, right, is the 40/40 is that, you know, as you start double or triple clicking, you're going to see the breakdown, right? It's up to you to figure out which one's going to be the biggest impactful to your business. But I think as you start to kind of triple down, click that, you'll see, you know, hey, we could probably work on this because that's an initiative, and give a little more clarity and visibility into some of the feedback our customers are saying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if people aren't quite sure how to work out what's more important to them, because it probably will vary based on different kinds of companies as well. And so what I would do is I would kind of take like what it is you're trying to change and maybe trying to categorize it further. So something that might be helpful is maybe you work out, for example, on a scorecard, how hard is it to code? How popular is that request? Maybe the time it's going to take you in development to actually do that for your costs, and then kind of judge what impact it will have for the customers too, not just for ones that have complained, but for your other customers. And kind of if you score all those things that you can do with those kind of scores, it might actually help you understand which one to target first.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so moving on here. Another question that we've actually had is a customer has asked, some issues in one area might kind of create feedback in another area, so it's almost like it's like masking itself, as it were. And if that actually happens, do you categorize it in like the area that it came from or the area that it actually affected?
So in most cases, we categorize it in the area that it came from, right? One of the things that we also do with Rough is that you may have a customer, right, in your feedback or Red said, you know, I'm having some issues with the product. I really, you know, it seems like it's not performing as well as I'd like it to, and I'm having hard times using it, right? So in that case, right, we just mentioned the R and the U. So we categorize them both in the source as well as kind of where they would affect the R and the U. Now, as we go to the double clicking of learning more, we then categorize it by subcategories. If it has to pertain to usability, or in the case of Confluence editing, we would then group it into something like that. Now, one thing that is particular, right, is that the first process of this was all manual, right? So, imagine the voice of the customer team, which, going through all this manual. That's not like that anymore. We've worked on and are continuing to work on a automated process. If you're interested, again, in that automated process and maybe seeing if it helps you, let us know on the hashtag, or not the hashtag, but the mention, and we can help you with it. But hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think so. So we had another question, and someone's asked here, are you still manually reading through 40,000 pieces of customer feedback, or have you actually automated that in some way now?
Hell no, yes. Though we absolutely love all the feedback that we get, no. My team is not fairly large. We're lean, mean machines. So our first month or so was to go through that data and categorize it, but we have some amazing people on the team that have worked on the automation, and right now it is fully automated.
Okay, cool. I'm glad to hear it. I feel really sorry for someone that had to sit there and read through 40,000 feedback items.
Well,
okay,
yeah, I think that's how cool the process is, right? Because it just allows you, we want to share this with everybody. Because I think, you may not have 40,000 comments, but you may have enough that you can't read them all. So hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got another question, and someone said here, do you have any advice on how to collect feedback to make it easier to categorize kind of into those areas of RUF?
Yeah, so first off, there's probably 3 steps. The first one is figure out, be consistent on your sources, right? So for us, we use, so we have our support, and we actually went to our support team and shared with them the RUF model and what we wanted to do. And every single ticket that comes in, right, which we get a good amount of, is categorized into RUF and then into the subcategories. So we find the consistent theming across all of them. So first off, keep it consistent, find the sources. Now for us, we are a SaaS-based business, so that means that, to give you some insights, is that we have over 58,000 enterprise customers, but we have over 5 million people that are using our products. So we implemented the NPS modal that was part of the process so we could gauge our end users. So as you capture the feedback, I would say that keep consistent with core areas, things like, as I mentioned, support, NPS. I often talk about insights that you might get from community, as well as social media. Some of those core areas and churn are going to help you to kind of rough out the categories. Now, as you get consistent, as the data comes in, it's just going to get grouped into it. And then as you share these insights, you could go, okay, you know what, let's spend some time focusing on the usability portion of it, and how can we improve that, and then get customers. I think the biggest thing is that you filter it out. So instead of having to read 40,000 comments, you're using RUF to get down to maybe the 1,000, right? Which is a lot easier to digest and a lot easier to understand.
Okay, good to know. So we've got another question here. I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, feel free to tweet us at RUFing It Out or put it into the questions box, and we're more than happy to answer any questions you've got. So the next question here is someone basically said they've heard that you guys actually randomize your feedback internally and kind of send it out to people internally. So I'm guessing they've heard that somewhere else, and they're wondering why is you actually do that, like plus and minus kind of on your feedback, and if there is a reason why you do that to gauge the reactions.
So one of the things that I don't know, we end up, so as part of the company initiative, right? So remember I talked about insights without action is useless. So we do a couple of things for our internal employees. One of the things we end up doing, right, is that 40,000 is we send out every single week something called a customer digest. and that includes our score as well as a list of randomized customer feedback to all of our employees. So everybody in the company gets an email every single week. And the idea behind that randomizer is is to make sure that people are aware. I believe that's probably what that person is talking about, hopefully. But yeah, we communicate that to our employees on a weekly basis, so they're aware of it. Once they understand it and learn about it, the hope is that they can share the uniqueness of maybe a comment they saw with the people on their team, so they can do additional insights into those areas.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like that's the last of our questions we actually have here. If you have any questions after we end the webinar, feel free to tweet us or email us, and we're obviously happy to answer those as well. I think we've just got one more question coming in. Let me just check that. So someone's asked, what do you do with feedback that doesn't provide any additional details about the issue? So for example, if it just says, I hate Jira, and there's no reason as to why they said that, what do you do with that kind of feedback?
So some of the things that we try to do is we actually want to follow up with the customers of why they hate Jira. And particularly some of those we will group into probably the RU, especially if we are getting more than one from them. But yeah, we have people like I think we've gotten some of it's slow. Well, what's slow, right? We have, in addition to the voice of the customer team, we have our researchers as well as our product managers. So we get that data, we bucket it, and then we allow some of our employees to follow up with them. We also send out specific emails that are, hey, give us a little more detail on, complexity. Like one thing I'd mention was the usability, and mention complexity. Complexity is complex, right? And in most cases, when we start seeing usability and how it's grouped into U, it's hard to go, well, what's complex about it? So, particularly in that area, and to give you guys some insights, is that's one of the things that we focused on or are focusing on this year, is to get a little more insights into the U and specific areas that might improve the product. So again, the idea behind it is just to categorize, to drill deeper into specific areas. It's not the end all be all, but it helps you get on the right foot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the advice that I would give there is, if a customer's provided you negative feedback, the chances are they would be willing to talk to you and actually expand on what they would like to improve, what they're not actually liking about your product. And so just feel free to go back to them and say, can you give me more understanding about what it is we're not doing for you? And they're probably going to be more than happy to actually give you that expanded information.
Absolutely, yeah. I think people that, we all know, right, that people that are frustrated, a little more passionate to write things, which we love because we care about them. And absolutely, is that as we ask for more detail, I haven't seen anybody that said it just sucks and doesn't want to talk more. We really get some valuable insights as we start drilling and asking more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. So I think we'll end the webinar here today because we're kind of out of questions. If you do think of any questions after we end it, feel free to drop us an email at Cackle using hello@cackle.com, and we're more than happy to kind of follow up with any questions you might have and put them to Sean as well if they need his input as well. And so with that, guys, thanks for attending today. Really appreciate it.